It's time for my full Premier League predictions. Pep Guardiola is the best manager this league has ever seen. Amorim, I think, should be lucky to still have his job. Eddie Howe is a manager that can make pig shit look like good steak. Can we start putting some respect on Thomas Frank's name? I have had a really weird feeling about Chelsea this season. So today we have the full Premier League table prediction, 1 to 20. And also as a bonus, before recording, I manually put in each result to every Premier League game to see what my ultra specific Premier League predictions would be. And I'll show you what that looked like at the end of the video, because it's very different to what I actually predicted. In 20th, sitting at the bottom of the table, propping up all the other 19 teams, I have Scott Parker's Burnley. Scott Parker's Burnley, if he stays to the end of the year, because his Premier League record has been nothing but disappointing. And I think it's going to be quite hard improving on that record, despite bringing in some Premier League experience, but losing their star man in Brownhill, who got 18 goals last season from midfield. I just don't really see where the goals are coming from. But it's not just their transfer business, which I think is undermining Scott Parker's good work last season. But if you do look at the stats from last season, they actually overperformed their expected points by 24, as well as overperforming their expected goals against by 40. So despite having a record-breaking defense, the stats suggest the picture could have looked a lot different, and therefore they sit at the bottom of the table. And in 19th, unfortunately, another promoted side in Sunderland. Now I'm seeing a lot of optimism around Sunderland. I've not been there. I mean online, mainly due to some excellent business that they did in the summer. But it's important to remember, especially if you're not a Championship fan, that they did scrape through getting into the Premier League. Even in the playoffs, they still needed a little bit of magic at the Stadium of Light to get themselves to Wembley, where they eventually got the glory they wanted. And obviously, every promoted team's fans is going to want their club to invest in the squad to try and give them the best hopes of survival. But let's not pretend that splashing the cash in the summer automatically guarantees you survival, because we've seen the exact opposite happen with the likes of Fulham not too long ago. I think the optimism around the signings is more than worthy, and Sunderland fans should definitely dream, but for me, they're going to be sat in 19th. And sitting one place above them in 18th is Leeds United. All three of the promoted clubs going down for me, but not a lot of people are suggesting that Leeds are going to finish above Sunderland. But again, if you look at their performance from last season, they actually performed basically as expected. Their expected points, goals against, goals for, were basically on track to what they should have got. So therefore, being statistically the best team in the league, I reckon they're going to have the best chance of survival, but not quite make it and finish in 18th. And again, similar to Scott Parker, Daniel Farke has had an abysmal time in the Premier League, averaging around 0.53 points per match. Now, he's never been backed with this amount of money before, but I just don't see it working. It's a shame, but they're all going back down. In 17th, narrowly avoiding the drop, I have Graham Potter's West Ham. Now, I don't want to get too caught up in last season's performance, because this is a new season with new expectations, a clean slate. Let's not get bogged down by the past, but instead revel in what could be. But when your what could be is Graham Potter, who has only 5 league wins in the West Ham dugout, it looks pretty bleak for East London. I actually do rate Graham Potter. I admired his work at Brighton. I thought he'd get swallowed up at Chelsea, and that's exactly what happened. And I just don't think he's the correct fit, the correct person to lead West Ham back up the table. And due to the lack of business, which I just haven't found very inspiring, the patchiness of West Ham last season, and seeing that in matchday 21 they were in a respectable 13th and then fell away to 17th under Graham Potter, only for a small resurgence in the back end of the campaign. It's not looking good. They're 17th. In 16th, and I think this might be a little low, I have Wolverhampton Wanderers. Again, similar to West Ham, I rate their manager, Victor Pereira, coming in at the end of last season, giving them some hope, some optimism for the future. But in a summer where you lose some important talent, Cunha and Aït-Nouri being the headlines, the likes of Tommy Doyle and Guedes, the squad rotation players, I think losing those type of players could really see a negative effect on this Wolves squad. They might get thin in and around those busy Christmas periods. And seeing how much they can go hot and cold, going on a 7-game unbeaten run, winning 6 and drawing 1 in around March, April time, but then finishing the campaign losing 3 out of 4, I don't think that type of form is going to get you much higher than 16th. In 15th, and I think they'll take this, I'm going to go for Brentford. For the first time, Brentford are going into a campaign not really knowing what to expect. But the reason I've not got them that close to the relegation zone is because I believe in the machine of Brentford, that different cogs can fit in at Brentford and continue their Premier League survival. And the same people that are questioning the unknown of Keith Andrews were the same people that were questioning the likes of Gary O'Neill when he took over at Bournemouth, and look at the brilliant work he did at his season there. We won't mention how it ended at Wolves, but just because you don't know him yet doesn't mean he can't produce a bit of quality and keep Brentford in the league. In 14th, I have Fulham. They're not really pulling up any trees, not making any headlines, and to be honest, it's probably quite unfair to have them this low due to the brilliant work that Marco Silva has done over recent years. Having a lot of ex-top 6 players in there, it's a squad with a lot of talent, but I just see a little bit more potential in other teams, a little bit more ambition, more excitement, and it's pushed them down really into 14th. In 13th, I have Everton. I don't think they'll be anywhere near the relegation zone, but I do think people are getting a little bit too ahead of themselves and getting excited about Everton again. After a period of real instability, David Moyes has come back and really steadied the ship and had an impressive end to the campaign last season. And now, signing the likes of Jack Grealish, Everton fans should be over the moon and dreaming of a top half of the table finish. But I'm not an Everton fan, thank fuck. Moving into that new stadium, it could have a negative effect. It might not quite feel like home. And we have to remember, this is the same kind of squad that were really swimming in some dangerous waters over the last couple of seasons. I think they should be happy with a 13th. I'm happy with putting them there. A good foundation to build on into the future. In 12th, and dropping down the table, I have Nottingham Forest. Now let's get one thing straight. They've kept a lot of things that made them successful last season, with the exception of Elanga. Keeping Gibbs White will be massive. Some of their signings look exciting, but you have to look at the football being played. And I do feel like at the end of last season, Nuno's style was starting to be figured out. You can't sit back and rely on your counter-attacking ability for another season. Premier League managers and tactics are constantly evolving, and they will find answers, and they started to at the end of last season. That's why they're not playing in the Champions League this campaign. A similar pattern started to happen at Wolves. I don't think he's this long-term project manager, but it will be far from a bad season, just a respectable 12th. In 11th, maybe surprisingly, I have Bournemouth. It feels like everyone's being really down about Bournemouth at the minute, when they were the sweethearts of the Premier League at one point last season. Now, admittedly, they've had a pretty bad pre-season and lost basically their entire defense, but I do think that's being slightly overblown, and people are forgetting how good their recruitment has been. That's how they've gotten to the point of selling defenders to PSG and Real Madrid and Liverpool. Their recruitment has been spot on, so I'm not going to be one to question it. Bringing in Petrovic as their goalkeeper, I think, is a smart move. The speed in which they signed Adrian Truffert after losing Kirkes gives me hope that they've seen and scouted this player, and it's not a rush signing, but a calculated one. And I think the likes of Senesi have the talent and ability to step up and take a bigger role next season. I think their defensive problems are being a little overdone. I think they're going to be okay and finish in a pretty decent 11th spot. And that will almost certainly have something to do with Iriola as well, who put in a brilliant tactical performance last season. People were touting him for the Spurs job in the summer, dealing with a pretty difficult injury crisis at points last season, keeping the likes of Semenyo. I think we can't underestimate this Bournemouth team, and I think they'll put in a similar performance this season. In 10th, I have Man United. Now, Man United fans might be dreaming of a top 6 finish due to bringing in Cunha and Mbuemo and Sesko. Their attacking line looks excellent, don't get me wrong, and their problem last season was scoring goals. But a massive culprit of that was their ability to build up from the back. It's been a question I've had of Ruben Amorim's system since before he joined Man United. His ability to progress the ball through the pitch using his centre-backs. There were questions about it at Sporting, and right now I don't see any different patterns that we're going to see this season. Your front line is brilliant, but can you get the ball to them in the first place? That's the question I'm asking. And I feel like as a country, we've completely breezed past that. Man United lost 18 games games last season, and it should not be accepted. Amorim, I think, should be lucky to still have his job, but despite saying all of that, they only play 1 game a week next season. They're not in any form of Europe. And a Man United team with fresh legs, I don't think you can put them in the bottom half of the table again. That would be atrocious. But I don't feel brave enough to put them any higher than 10th. In 9th, I have Crystal Palace. Now, wow, everyone is excited about Crystal Palace at the minute. I mean, I'm seeing people put them in 6th, 5th, knocking on the door of Champions League. Guys, let's just calm down a little bit, okay? They did brilliantly beating Man City and winning the FA Cup, putting in a good performance in the Charity Shield. They look good again this season, but last season in the Premier League, they weren't exactly world beaters. Considering how much everyone rates, including me, Oliver Glasner, they finished in 12th last season. That feels a little underwhelming, and as of recording, it looks like they're on the brink of losing Gahey. They could lose Eze to Spurs, and they underperformed their XG last season by 16 goals. So when they're losing one of their best attacking outlets, what's their attacking football going to look like next season? I don't think it gets them much higher than 9th. I still feel like it's a successful season for Crystal Palace. Now in 8th upwards, it feels like we're getting into difficult territory. I was swapping these teams around. I was thinking it through. This was difficult. But in 8th, and it might just be in the position we are in now as of recording, I have Newcastle United. Now maybe I'm getting swept up with the feeling around Newcastle at the minute, the real disappointing transfer window so far, potentially losing Isak, and if not, just keeping him hostage on the bench. Maybe I'm getting swept up in the negativity because they still have a brilliant squad, one of the best midfields in the league, with Isak, one of the best attacks in the league, and Eddie Howe is a manager that can make pig shit look like good steak. I don't know. I guess the only thing I have to go on is when they were in the Champions League last time, they really underperformed in the Premier League. I feel like they're probably going to do better this time in the Champions League due to the change of format. So that's going to add more games to their schedule. It's disappointing. Newcastle fans shouldn't be happy with this, but I think I have higher hopes for everyone above them. So they're in 8th. In 7th, and this might be my second boldest shout of the day, I have Brighton. Now look, what can I say? I am a Fabian Hertzler believer. I believe what he says. He wants to challenge the establishment. He wants to push further up the table. That combined with excellent recruitment, they've got an abundance of talent in that squad, despite the right back position, which does worry me slightly. There's something about Brighton this season that really excites me, and I think they could upset a lot of teams. And I've gone bold, I've gone brave, I have them in 7th. In 6th, potentially just missing out on Champions League football, I have Aston Villa. Now, if we look at Aston Villa's 23-24 campaign and 24-25 campaign, they actually had a very similar performance, but finished 2 places lower. Now, to me, that shows that Aston Villa are basically kind of hitting their ceiling at the minute. Now, does that mean they can't improve in seasons to come? Definitely. Unai Emery is a good manager, but a manager that also, at the same time, does feel like he averages out at around the 8th to 5th mark in his league campaigns, both in England and Spain. And from what I've seen from Aston Villa this summer, or from the lack of what I've seen from Aston Villa this summer, I don't think this is the season for them to push on. So considering how well they did in the Champions League last season, finishing 6th might feel like a disappointment, but it almost feels like they need to time when they spend in the market for when they have the ability to push up the table. And right now, it doesn't feel like that gap, that opportunity is there for Aston Villa, and they bottom out at 6th. In 5th, and I've been watching other Premier League prediction videos, I feel a bit blindsided that people aren't backing this team enough. I have Tottenham finishing 5th. Before we get into the recruitment, can we start putting some respect on Thomas Frank's name? He did an outstanding job at Brentford, and it feels like in the same sentence when people praise Thomas Frank for how good he did at Brentford, they kind of undermine that and say, well, it's Thomas Frank's first season, hasn't quite operated at this level of football before, I think he'll finish in 9th or in 8th. Thomas Frank is a due diligent tactician that I believe can make that step up to operating in European football, operating amongst the big clubs. I've not put him in the automatic Champions League spots by no doubt, but 5th is entirely achievable, especially due to their recruitment. Potentially picking up Savinho from City, that's an exciting signing. Potentially stealing Eze away from Arsenal, that might just be the signing of the window, combined with a squad squad, which, let's remember, in the 23-24 campaign, the squad compared to now is fairly similar. There's a lot of the same faces hanging around, and that team, under a manager that everyone claims wasn't good enough in Ange, that team finished 5th. So with an improved manager, a more pragmatic manager, with basically the same squad adding even more talent, and what, they've lost an aging Heung-min Son whose effect on the team was dwindling anyway. For me, Tottenham are almost certain to finish in the top 6. And I have them 5th. And finishing one place above them, the North London clubs compared in my table, Arsenal. Now, this is controversial, I will admit it, because they've signed that last piece of the puzzle that everyone was saying. They've signed that potentially 25 goal a season striker in Gyökeres. I think the signing of Norgard is incredibly underrated. He'll pick up loads of minutes next season and will be a vital cog in just the machine that Arsenal are. That, alongside the flair and silk of Zubimendi, they've not lost any major talents really, or any ones that are worth speaking about. Arsenal look primed to kick on next season. But how many times have we said that? How many times are we going to continue to do this and tell ourselves that this is the moment for Arsenal to win the league? I don't see it happening. I'm seeing this U shape in formation circling the ball left to right around teams' block. I'm seeing it to be more uneventful by the match. I'm seeing it not adapt with the talents that's coming in. I don't think that Arsenal are going to win the league. I actually think 3 teams are going to be better than them. I see this Arsenal project coming almost to a stale end at the end of this season. Now, what that has to say for Mikel Arteta's future, this isn't the video for it, but the 3 teams above them look more exciting going forward. And as good as Arsenal are going backwards and as good as their press is, it hasn't been good enough to win a league yet, and it's not going to be good enough to win the league this season. In 3rd, and I'm really sad to say this, I have Liverpool, my own team. So, look, Arsenal fans, you can't have a go at me. I've put Arsenal in 4th. I'm being pessimistic about my own team as well. Now, don't get me wrong. I've had an absolute ball watching the talent walk through the doors at Liverpool. Florian Wirtz, Hugo Ekitike, the speed of the Kirkes and Frimpong deals. My word, it's been a summer to remember. And yet there's something that doesn't feel right. It's almost this feeling of it's too good to be true. I worry about us off the ball slightly with those spaces in behind the fullbacks. Now, I'm not just saying the typical line of the fullbacks bomb on and leave the space in behind. I think the way we circulate the ball leaves those spaces, not just due to the eagerness of the fullbacks. And that combined with the centre-back issues that we're having. Now, as of recording, it looks like we're going to sign highly rated youngster Leone from Parma. I want Liverpool to win the league, and a part of me believes that we're going to win the league, but I have to look at it the same way that I've looked at every other team. I have to be impartial with a lack of emotion, and there's something telling me that Liverpool are just going to start to be found out ever so slightly. There's going to be holes in their out of possession work that are going to come to light, and Arne Slot is just going to have a season of reflection and go again next season. And finally, we come down to the final 2. Who is going to win the Premier League? Now, let me start with this. This whole summer, before the Club World Cup, right? This isn't just Club World Cup bias. I have had a really weird feeling about Chelsea this season. It feels like everyone rates them, but no one backs them. No one's truly saying that they have it in them. That squad of players, the amount of talent that they have, the youthfulness, the dynamism, the excitement, it feels like no one is willing to put their hat in the ring and say that Chelsea could win the league. I'm going to say that. I think Chelsea could win the league. I rate Maresca highly. I don't particularly enjoy his football. It feels a little monotonous. It feels too close to Pep Guardiola. It's not in my DNA particularly, but that doesn't mean I think he's an excellent manager. Did a brilliant job last season, and I think his team are only going to get better. I think Chelsea could win the league, but I've put them in 2nd. I'm sorry. I put them in I'm sorry, right? That feeling inside of me thinking that Chelsea are going to do something, it's not a hope. If anything, it's a gut-wrenching concern that Chelsea could win the league. That feeling has to be overridden by the inevitability of Pep Guardiola. He had a poor season last season. Or really, if we really look at it, he had a poor middle third of the season. But Pep Guardiola is the best manager this league has ever seen. He's the best tactician this league has ever seen. I mean, we're looking at a Pep Guardiola team with a massive number 9 up front, marauding fullbacks, creative number 10s, and potentially just a big lump good shot stopper in goal. They weren't that good at the end of last season, and yet they just kept picking up results. They're going to be better this season. Everyone agrees. And for me, they're going to win the league. It's not what I want, but it's what I think will happen. Right then, to finish off the video, before recording, I manually put in every result to every Premier League game this season to get my ultra-specific Premier League prediction table. And for what I could see, it's massively different to what I actually predicted. My bottom 3 stayed fairly the same, this time with Sunderland at the bottom. 19th was West Ham and Burnley in 18th. But the other promoted side in Leeds got all the way up into 14th. A minute ago, I was praising the hell out of Thomas Frank, talking whimsical about how they're going to push on this season. But in my ultra-specific Premier League table, they came 13th, so maybe I don't rate them as high as I thought I did. Brighton and Aston Villa are in 7th and 6th, so that's basically bang on to what I actually predicted. Manchester City finished 4th. Now, maybe that's me just trying to overcompensate for them just winning every game. And to be honest, I don't see them coming any lower than 3rd next season. Arsenal in 3rd, which they probably still won't be happy with. Liverpool in 2nd, so I must actually think we're going to do better than I predicted. But to win the league, and again, showing that I have this weird feeling about this team, Chelsea are my Premier League champions in my ultra-specific Premier League predictions. But anyway, thanks for watching. If you've got this far, then I reckon you've got another 10 minutes. So watch another video. Why not? And then maybe subscribe. Chance would be a fine thing.